Welcome to the Simply Luxurious Kitchen, and welcome to season 6 of this cooking show, and welcome to my kitchen. Norman and Nell are joining me. They're hanging out by the cookbook library, and they've been helping me throughout this process of preparing this recipe and harvesting the berries, because we are making a dessert or afternoon tea snack that is something you might be inspired to do with all the fresh berries and fruit available right now in the markets and in our gardens. This one was inspired by a couple different things. So this recipe is an almond torte that was inspired by 2 different places that I've eaten and experiences I've had. And we're also going to drizzle it with fresh berry drizzle, and I'm going to show you a couple different berries you can use, as well as a little bit of, and here again is your choice, chantilly cream or creme anglaise. It is a very simple dessert, and it is full of flavor. And again, it is so seasonal right now, as all of the berries are fresh and full of that natural sweetness. You're gonna not need to add as much sugar to the macerated fruit as we might other times of the year. All right, so let's talk about this torte. So we're making an almond torte, and the recipe is inspired from one of my favorite restaurants that I had the opportunity to dine at a couple years ago. We're cooking out of Chez Panisse Desserts cookbook by Lindsay Scher, and I had the opportunity in 2019 to eat at the dining room at Chez Panisse in Berkeley, California. They also have a cafe that you can eat at, which you don't need reservations in advance. The restaurant you do. I'll link to my experience dining there. As a 5-course dinner, wines paired with every course. It was the most memorable and delicious meal I have ever had. And I've since picked up a couple of the cookbooks that have been inspired by that recipe. And this almond torte is inspired or comes from this cookbook. I will link that on the show notes. And this is also inspired by a lunch I had this past spring in Portland. Tracy Hooper, who you may remember has been on the podcast a couple of times talking about the Confidence Project as well as The New Hello, her book, The New Hello. She specializes in communication, in making sure that we're speaking clearly and strong, but also respectfully and effectively. I'll link to those podcast episodes if you're curious. Anyway, she invited me to her home for lunch up in the hills of Portland on the most beautiful spring day. And for me, what I mean by beautiful is there was rain and sun coming, and her garden was beautiful. Anyway, I walked in and we had our lunch. I'll show you some pictures here. And for dessert, we had an almond tart. And you can see here she's decorated it with edible flowers as well as berries. It was not only beautiful, but it was delicious. And knowing that I love almond, I wanted to explore different almond tart recipes. And when I tried Chez Panisse's recipe, I was like, okay, I'm taking the inspiration of Tracy's decorations and this love of almond, and I'm going to use the Chez Panisse recipe, and then I am combining the drizzle of the fruit because I have so many berries here. I got to put them to good use. As well as add a little bit of extra yum with the creme anglaise or the chantilly cream. So, as I said, so very simple. And what we're going to make first is the almond paste. And you can buy almond paste. You're going to need 7 1/8 of a cup, so nearly a full cup of almond paste. And I will just say, if you want to buy almond paste, it's going to get expensive. It is so simple to make almond paste. And you may be thinking, oh, but I have to blanch the almonds, I have to roast the almonds, that's going to be pain. Don't do that. Just buy almond flour. So that's what I've done here. We have almond flour, you have convection sugar or powdered sugar, you have 1 large egg white, you have your almond extract, and you have a little bit of salt. That is it. You put the dry ingredients in first, the powdered sugar and the almond flour, and those are 1 cup and 3/4 of the almond flour and 1 1/2 cups of the powdered sugar. Put those into the food processor, mix them up first. Then, while the food processor is going, go ahead and add the egg yolk, 1 large egg yolk, followed by 1 to 1 1/2 teaspoons of almond extract and that 1/8 of salt. that is it. As you can see here, so simple. Then you're done and you have more than enough for this recipe. In fact, I stored the rest, which was about 2/3 of a cup left over, because I can make it with the stollen that I usually make for Christmas. All right, but again, so much cheaper, and as you can see here, so easy to make. You can do it well ahead of time or the same day, and because you're going to use it immediately. So as you can see here, I have 7 1/8 cup of almond paste, and it tastes really good. Okay, so now we're going to make a torte. And all we need to do, again, is use a food processor. That's it. But first, go ahead and turn your oven on to 325 Fahrenheit. And now, all we have to do is combine the ingredients all together. So the first thing we want to do is get 1 1/4 cup of sugar. So regular granulated sugar, 1 1/4 cup sugar. And you're going to mix that, with your almond paste. Okay, and that's 7 1/8 cup of almond paste. And just mix it until it's just fine, kind of grainy granulars. I'll show you. So as you can see, this mixture of the almond paste and the sugar looks almost like, I don't know, kind of like candy, crystallized candy. It just looks like powder, and it's all blended in beautifully. And you saw there, it took maybe 15 seconds to do that. So now what we're going to do is add the butter. And the butter, as well as the eggs, need to be at room temperature. So maybe while you're making the almond paste, or maybe that morning of making this, pull out those ingredients. You'll need 6 large eggs, and you'll need 1 cup of unsalted butter. So I'm just going to roughly chop up the butter. As you can see, it's fairly soft. I left it out for about an hour. Then, now we want to add a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And we're going to, again, pulse on our food processor. And you'll just pulse until it looks light and fluffy. Now, it's still going to be a little bit heavy depending on how soft your butter is. You're going to be fine as long as it was room temperature. You just don't want it frozen. So that's what it should look like right there. Now, all you have to do next is 1 by 1 add the eggs. Here we go. Put this back on. I'm going to get pan. Here we go. Okay, pulse that. Two. Now I just picked up these eggs at the market. And a quick story about our market. So one of our favorite markets, there's 2 here in Bend, is during the work week. And I prefer this one only because it's primarily just food. We have other markets that also have artisanal goods and all the crafts and things like that, which is fun if that's what you want to go check out. But I usually just want to go get food, fresh food. And I learned that we can now take our dogs to the market. So as you can see here, we went to the market this morning and we just picked up this fresh farm raised eggs, a dozen of eggs, and Nell and Norman came with me. As you see here, we're waiting in line to pick up some blueberries because that's the one berry that we don't have in our garden anymore. We're not going to put blueberries into the maceration, but you absolutely can use blueberries for this dessert for decoration. In fact, we might have to do that a little bit. But these blueberries, and in the summertime, blueberries just have the perfect sweetness. It's what blueberries should taste like, in my opinion. And you may have followed us on Instagram this summer and saw that Nell and Norman became very well versed at how to pick blueberries off of the garden, in the garden's blueberry shrub. I don't have very many yet, but once they realized that that's where the blueberries were, Nell was helping herself and Norman quickly followed. So anyway, that's where these eggs came from. So we're on 2. Let's do 4 more. Here we go. Now what I like to do before I put in my 6th egg is go ahead, scrape everything around so that everything's getting incorporated evenly. I bet you that batter is gonna taste great already. Yep, it does. And since I'm here, let's do this. There we go, the 6th egg. So now, as you can see here, all 6 eggs are in the batter. It's nice and smooth, beautiful yellow. We add the last ingredients, and these are the dry ingredients. You're gonna add a cup of flour, regular flour. I use really light pastry flour, but as long as it's all-purpose, you're great. 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. And a little bit of salt. Just a pinch. Mix that up. Just make sure all the sides are incorporated. So now the batter is ready to go into the cake pan. And what we're gonna do is you want a spring form cake pan so that you can easily take out this cake without worrying about flipping it over and it falling to pieces. Now what you also wanna do is butter the sides before you put your parchment paper down. You definitely want to put parchment paper down. I found that to be one of the best and simplest tricks to getting your cake out cleanly in any kind of cake pan. And if you want to add a little bit of it on the bottom, that's fine too. I'll be generous here. Oops. And this is just the back side or the inside of my butter that came from the butter that's in the cake, or in the cake. All right, now I picked up these pre-cut 9-inch round parchment paper pieces from Williams-Sonoma. I'll link them on the show notes. It has been a game changer. It simplifies the sizing process. If you need to make them smaller, that's very easy to do. You would just fold it in half, fold it in quarters, put the center of this at the center of the pan, and then make a mark as to where you need it, and then just simply cut it there, and then it fits. But this is a perfect size because this is a 9-inch baking pan. That's all we need to do before we put the batter in there, and that's what we're going to do. And by the way, do taste this. It's going to be hard to wait hour to hour and 15 minutes. We're going to have to wait before it comes out of the oven. Okay, here we go. As I go. Now you may be wondering, what is the difference between a torte and a tarte? Well, I looked that up for you. Tarte is French for pie, and a torte is actually an English word from the German language meaning cake. So a torte is a freestanding cake of some sort. So there's no crust to hold it in. That's why we're baking it in this springform pan, so it holds it all in there. And a tarte will have crust or pastry. So that is the difference. So yes, this is actually more of a English and German word origin, but oh, it is still so simple and full of flavor. All right, so how long do we put in the oven? So again, we're baking it at a fairly low heat for baking, 325 Fahrenheit, and here is the Celsius amount here at the bottom of the screen. We're gonna bake it for an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. Now, my oven is really small, and I have a convection oven, so it will circulate the air. I'm going to check mine at about 45 minutes to 50 minutes just to make sure it doesn't overcook or bake. So it really depends on your oven. You just want to basically be able to put in a toothpick or a knife and it coming out clean, and then you know your cake is done. So just make sure you know your oven, and I would always check, err on the side of caution, and check a little earlier. That's okay. Nothing's necessarily rising like a souffle. That's going to be deflated by you peeking. So here we go. All right, so now what we're going to make is simply the fruit drizzle, the fresh berry drizzle. And it's the simplest thing to make. This is something you would maybe put on strawberry shortcake. And if you have, you know, raspberries, marionberries, use whatever berry you have in your garden that you love. And just this subtle use of how we're going to kind of combine it to macerate them differently is just going to add a little bit different texture to the fruit. So as you can see here, I have my blackberries. I have a ton of blackberries right now. And I have my strawberries. Norman and Nell helped me pick the strawberries earlier. Here's a peek at where I have my strawberries in my garden. They're in pots actually. They're everberries, and so they just keep producing strawberries all summer long, and they're in the pot. And you may remember that I talked about Nell. She loves her strawberries. In fact, when she was a puppy, we had her on the very first day. She hopped into the strawberry pots. And it's hard to believe she was that small, because now she's full grown and she does not fit in those pots anymore. But man, she loved those strawberry pots. Okay, so what we're gonna do, get a paring knife or a small knife. And these have all been cleaned, but we need to do two things. We need to obviously destem them, but then we're going to hull out the strawberries. And so just take the white out of the strawberry. And this again just really intensifies the flavor. This is where a lot of the water is held in the strawberry. So you're just basically getting rid of that. Now we're gonna have to make a judgment call. We're going to keep 3/4 of the strawberries in perfect shape. If they're really big, you can chop them up, quarter them up. But then we're going to mash 1/4 of them. So maybe don't make the decision yet. Just go through and hull them, just destem them and hull them. And then you can make that decision later. But this is part of the intensification of the flavor, because it doesn't water down. They're already going to be macerated, so they're already going to start breaking down in the sugar. But this will actually give us a little bit more of that strawberry flavor that we want in the first place. So I'll hull these out, and then we'll make the drizzle. Now, one thing that I love to bring into my kitchen are fresh flowers. And these flowers behind me, I was so tickled to see them at Trader Joe's, because I don't have hydrangeas here in Bend. It's hard to grow hydrangeas like this, the big mop heads here, except for there are a couple Annabelles and Phantom. I have Phantom in my garden. They're not quite at this stage yet. But anyway, so I saw one of my favorites, the green with a little touch of pink, and then I just added some finishing flowers to complement them. And for less than $20, I have a bouquet. And that bouquet, both those flowers can last over a week. And so Norman and Nell, when I brought them home, they just epitomize fall and also a little bit of summer to me. Kind of that middle ground, that limbo land, as we dance from summer's end to autumn's beginning. And so this arrived home, and they were about ready to be put in the vase. But I like having flowers both in the kitchen, but throughout the house, as many of you already know. And lately, I've been able to get most of my flowers from my garden, which has been a treat, because as we know, during the winter we can't do that. So one time during August, I had more sunflower bouquets around my house. And then then I had dogs. I had 3, I think, bouquets. But now the dahlias are blooming. You can see some here. And if you like gardening, I do now post once a month peeks into my garden, as well as what I'm doing that particular month and what I'm learning, which is a lot. And it's a great conversation place too for the fellow gardeners in our community. So that's another benefit of being a top tier member, is you have access to the monthly gardening post. Okay, I will finish pulling these out, and then we'll get to putting them into the sugar. So what you can see here is I have far more blackberries than I do strawberries. Oh, there's one more strawberry. And so that's part of the reason I had the blackberries here, is because I knew I probably wouldn't have enough strawberries to make a good full drizzle for the whole cake. So what I'm going to do is I'm still going to keep them separate, but I'm just going to choose just about a third of these. Mainly the older ones that are a little mashed up anyway. Keep the ones that are more full form. And I'm just going to mash them. Now if you have a masher, a potato masher, you can absolutely do that. I'm just going to use my mortar and pestle, since I don't have that many strawberries, that is. Okay. So it's almost going to look like a little bit of jam. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to find 2 pitchers, small pitchers, where I can put the drizzled fruit as well as the maceration of the whole fruit in, and let them sit in the refrigerator or just out on the counter while the rest of the cake finishes baking. First I'm going to put the mashed fruit in. Then the whole fruit. Now put a little bit of sugar. Now if you have super fine sugar, that is even better. But most of us don't have super fine sugar. I'm just going to put about 2 tablespoons with this small amount. It's really to taste. If they're too tart, if your berries are too tart, that's when you would add a little more sugar. If you like them just the way they are, you still need to add at least a tablespoon so they can start macerating. So don't leave out the sugar. If you want a little bit more juice in your drizzle, mix it up. Yummy, it looks so good. All right, now we're gonna mash just a quarter of the blackberries. Again, I picked the older ones as far as more ripe ones that are already kind of falling apart. Oh, this is gonna be yummy. Look at how easy they mash. I mean, it just doesn't take anything at all. You can probably do it with your fingers, like stamping on grapes making wine. But you don't want to mash all of the berries, because you do want some structure. You want people to know what fruit it is, number one, and let them bite into that whole berry every once in a while. So I'm gonna put a tablespoon. I'm gonna put 3 tablespoons actually. My blackberries are pretty tart, at least to my taste. So you can check that out there. Now add the whole berries. And mine are pretty delicate. They break up very easily, so be very gentle with them. And again, this is a berry of your choice. You could even use peaches if you want. And I have a ton of peaches. You can see them here on my one peach tree that was just so happy this year, as our last frost came late, so it was able to wait on the blossoms. And I have so many peaches. They're not quite ripe yet. You could absolutely use stone fruit. You would do the same thing. You would mash up about a 1/4 or a 1/3 and then slice up into cubes the rest of the fruit. Season it with a little bit of sugar and and that would be your drizzle. So really pick the fruit you want, make this your own. Now I'm just gonna toss the mashed blackberries with the whole berries so that the sugar gets on all of them. Yeah. I'm gonna eat it now. And I'm just gonna set these aside and we'll make the chantilly cream and the creme anglaise. Okay, so there's 2 things you can make. And I'm gonna show you one from beginning to end and talk you through another that I've made before here and many other times on just recipes that I post on the blog, and it's super simple. Chantilly cream is where you would take a heavy cream, about a 1/2 cup to a full cup, depending on how much you want, and you would whisk it. I use my hand whisk or electric hand mixer until soft peaks form. And then you add about a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla and about to taste 1 teaspoon to a tablespoon of sugar. Again, to taste. It's what you want. So I would start adding just a little bit and taste it and then add more if you want it. And then that's it. That takes maybe 5 minutes. You whisk it up and you just sit here and you think about whatever you want to think about. Chat with whoever's in the kitchen. relax, take a deep breath, and before you know it, you're gonna have soft peaks. Then you add the sugar, and then you add the vanilla. So that's chantilly cream. What I would like to make with you today is creme anglaise, which is a custard, which is super simple. And part of the reason I'm doing it is because I have 1 egg yolk. Because remember we put the egg white into the almond paste. By the way, the kitchen is starting to smell very lovely, lovelily almondy. It's pretty awesome. I wish I could show or share that scent with you. But because I have 1 egg yolk left and I wanted to do something with it, I'm going to make creme anglaise. So you want, and I'm only making a small amount. You could double this, quadruple this, however you want to do it. But I'm just going to make it with 1 cup of whole milk, or if you want to get really rich, you can use heavy cream. Here we go. So I'm taking my 1 cup of milk, medium heat. While I'm waiting for that, I'm whisking the egg yolk, not to get it frothy, but just to get it evenly mixed up. The frothiness will actually impede your ability to cook the custard properly because you won't be able to know if the custard is done, and it will overcook likely. So don't get it to frothiness, just until it's all mixed and a solid yellow. So now that I've got the milk or the heavy cream in the pan on a medium heat, this is where if you have vanilla bean, actual vanilla bean, you're gonna just take 1 bean and scrape all the seeds out and put it in. If you don't, it's okay. Use vanilla extract. Just about 1/4 of a teaspoon to a 1/2 of a teaspoon. So while you have just put the milk in, you also want to put in about a tablespoon of sugar. You're warming it up. You're not bringing it to boil. This is ready. And in a second, we're going to add a little bit of that milk to this. And then we'll add all of the yolk back into the milk, and then the custard will form. That's how easy it is. But just imagine this drizzled on that almond cake. So simple, but classic flavors that just elevate the entire bite. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take a big serving spoon, or bigger than you would typically have at your dinner tablespoon, and put about a big tablespoon into my yolk. This is hot or warm, and you don't want to scramble this egg. Here we go. Gonna whisk it up, just tempering it to warm up the egg, to not cook it. Now I'm going to put it back in, and this is when the custard is going to form. And that spoon's going to help me, because once the custard covers the spoon as far as it's almost opaque, then we know our custard is done. See how it is covering it? It's not entirely like, frosting, but it's covering it. This is almost done. We are so close. So it happens really quickly. Is if your finger draws a line, just like that. You can see the line there? Then it's done. You want the temperature to be 170 to 175 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you have a candy thermometer and you want to test the temperature, that'll tell you that it's done. This is definitely done. All right, so now I'm going to put the creme anglaise in a small pitcher so that it can just easily be poured on the cake. So if you have a vanilla bean in this, you're going to want to cover this and keep the vanilla beans in there and refrigerate it until you're going to use it. Just before serving it, that's when you want to take the vanilla bean out, understandably. But that will again help intensify that flavor if you have a vanilla bean. Unlike myself, which I just had vanilla, but ideally you want vanilla bean. Okay, so clearly I need to stock up on something. As you can see here in my epicerie, I stock up on a lot of flours and baking ingredients, and I keep them in glass containers. I decant them once I get them home. It's not a big pantry space, or a pizzeria as I like to call it, but it's my personal grocery store. So I know I have everything. I have a shelf for the savory items that would be maybe using for my fish and my proteins, my dinners, my meals, my entrees. And then this shelf is the baking shelf with all the grains as far as oats for baking, flours, and I have a lot of almond flour. So this recipe was begging to be made. All right, I'm gonna put this in the refrigerator until the cake is done, and we are so close because this kitchen is smelling amazing, and I know that that is a good sign. So the cake is done. I've checked it 2 times. One actually at 45, Nell's finishing her dinner, 45 minutes, and it was ready at 50 minutes. Again, your oven will be different, so just keep checking it until that knife comes out clean and you'll be set. So what we're gonna do now, find a cake platter, and before you unclip or undo the springform pan, you wanna take a knife, and I've already done this, you wanna take a knife, back side of the knife, not the sharp side, just a butter knife, and just go all the way around, making sure the sides aren't stuck. Because as soon as the springform comes undone, you're gonna see where it's stuck. All right, now let's see how we did. Might be a little hot. Oh. Come on, everybody. Oh, it's Nellie's though. That's Nellie, the dog. Thank you. Let's let her finish, okay? Okay, let her finish. No, why don't you come in the kitchen with me? Come in here. I'll give you a blueberry, okay? Norman, want a blueberry? He likes his blueberries, as I was mentioning before. And while she finishes up, he can hang out in the kitchen with me. So now, there we go. It's like, why is it stuck? All right, everything's unstuck. Nothing's stuck to the sides. Just double checking here. Now, there we go. Just have to lift it out of the springform. Okay. Looking pretty good, huh? So grab a flat spatula. This is not necessarily one for cakes. It's just one that's very flat. And you're gonna try to get underneath the parchment and lift up so you can go all the way underneath. There you go. And then just lift very carefully and slide. Now it's up to you. You can take out the parchment or leave it. It doesn't matter because it will be easily discernible. You won't cut through it with your knife. So now you get to decorate it. Now what I did, I went out in the garden and I got some violets because they are edible. And you can use powdered sugar. We have powdered sugar here. Just a sprinkle on top. I wouldn't put the fruit on top unless you're going to serve it immediately. I would save the fruit drizzles for once you've, you know, divvied up the servings and it's on a plate. And then the creme anglaise as well will go there also. So are you ready to have a bite? So for the powdered sugar, what I like to do is just find a really small strainer and just right over the top. Nothing fancy, so simple. There we go, as much or as little as you want. Then you can break the flowers off the stem and decorate as you like. You can go around the edges. You can go on top. Totally up to you. All right, so now we get to eat it. So easy to cut through. Yum. Look at that. Nice and light, all the way baked through, but not over baked. I'm gonna cut one more slice because we are gonna pair it with the creme anglaise on one and the strawberries for the other. Let's do creme anglaise. I'm gonna put it on the side. Just on the side. And this one's gonna get strawberries right down the top and into the creme, because why not? And this one is gonna get the blackberries. I'm gonna put it on top this time, just to see the difference. And these blackberries macerated on top and a little on the ground, just so we know what the berry is. Almond torte with creme anglaise and a blackberry drizzle, and this one with a strawberry drizzle. So simple and right from your market or your garden. Now we gotta take a bite. Which one first? Woo! Well, at least we get to eat them both. Here we go. Blackberry and creme anglaise. Oh, and the tart is so light, or the torte is so light. So light. That almond torte is just so light, believe it or not. You add the flavor components of the blackberries and that creme anglaise, just makes it so special. Yeah, for the strawberry. That reminds me of an elevated strawberry shortcake, because you have the almond infused into that torte, and the strawberries are exactly what you put on a shortcake. So good. And as you saw, very simple to make. I hope this inspires you to go out, grab just a handful of berries, and make your own almond torte with the fresh fruit drizzle and creme anglaise. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the kickoff of this new season. This was actually the last episode I taped for this season, because I wanted to bring to you the fruits of the garden at this time of year when you too are stepping into September and have fresh produce and berries at your disposal. Enjoy this simple dessert and enjoy your day. Enjoy your food. And